So for me then to take on doing self-publishing seemed like a monumental, you step up. The title, the cover, I had to think up a name for my publishing house and be disciplined enough to get it done and find editors. So that's what I did, but I did hire book cover artists to put it all together.
That was Kayleen Reusser sharing some advice on her self-publishing experience. Stay tuned to hear more about Kayleen's journey as a writer here on Pages and Voices. I'm your host, Meg Bell. We'll be back after the intro. Welcome to Pages and Voices, the local author podcast, sponsored by the Allen County Public Library. This podcast is dedicated to featuring the works of talented authors within our community. Today's author guest is Kayleen Reusser. During Kayleen's 30-plus year writing career, she has written dozens of books for adults and children. Kayleen has brought us 4 volumes of poignant tales from interviews she conducted with 260 World War II veterans, mostly from Northeast Indiana. Memories from men and women raised on farms and in small towns and cities bring the war to a personal level. Her most recent book contains stories from men who served in Vietnam. It includes stories of soldiers who served in combat as tunnel rats and dog handlers, and one who helped save an abandoned child. In addition to her writing, Kayleen has presented in person and virtual programs to thousands of people. As the wife and mother of Air Force airmen, Reusser focuses her writing efforts on telling veteran stories to help preserve America's military heritage and raise the level of patriotism in this country. Kayleen, welcome to the podcast. We're so happy you could be with us today. We are going to begin with you sharing a story from one of your books. Is this World War II?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to be here. It's a real privilege. I will be reading from the World War II Legacies, Book 2. This is called They Did It for Honor, Stories of American World War II Veterans. And I know that this book is here in your library because I've seen it on display. Mm-hmm. This is a story from Alfred Edwards. On June 6, 1944, Alfred Edwards of Fort Wayne, Indiana, was operating a rhino barge. Such vessels carried tanks and troops as part of the first wave of troops to approach the shore of Omaha Beach in France. We had no protection from enemy fire as we guided it in, he said. When boats and troops reached the shore and put ramps down, the sight was grim. Dead GIs lay everywhere on the beach, he said. We dodged shooting from German soldiers while searching for mines embedded in the sand that could blow us up as we neared the shore. Despite incredible odds, Allied forces, which continued to arrive at the beach for weeks, slowly pushed German forces back into France. Codename of the secret invasion? Operation Overlord, though it was more commonly known as D-Day. After the Normandy beaches had been secured, Edwards became part of the Red Ball Express, a convoy of trucks that quickly delivered supplies for Allied forces along a closed route through Europe. The idea of fighting to defend one's country had been present in the Edwards home all during his childhood. We were a patriotic family, he said. My father, Albert William Edwards, fought in the British Army during World War I. He later emigrated to America, where he worked as a printer. He taught my 2 brothers and me to respect this new country. Dad reminded us that America had been good to us, and we should be thankful to have been born here. After completing CB training at Camp Perry, Virginia, Alfred was sent to Rhode Island as part of the 111th Naval Construction Battalion. Our instructors taught us how to use bulldozers and road equipment to build roads and runways, he said. When Edwards and thousands of other sailors sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to England in spring 1944, they were not told what their mission would be. Upon landing on June 4th, they were ordered to practice maneuvers with ships in the English Channel. We didn't learn that a major invasion was planned at Normandy, France, until June 5th. Boatswain's mate, Second Class Edwards, was discharged after the end of the war in December 1945. At that rank, he had earned $114 a month. His 2 brothers survived the war as well. Al reenlisted by joining the Naval Reserves while also working as an engineer at General Electric in Fort Wayne. He married and became a parent to one daughter. I don't believe anyone ever wanted to go to war, he said, but I felt lucky to serve my country during its time of need and would do it again. God bless America.
Thank you for sharing. And we are going to talk more about those books and those stories a little bit further on in the interview. But I want to begin by saying you began your career writing juvenile biographies. Am I correct about that? Or
Well, I began writing for freelance markets in the early 90s, and I basically had to teach myself how to write, so it took a really long time. I had been to college but got a degree in psychology, nothing officially in writing, because there really wasn't anything available at that time. So I taught myself, and it was very much where I was paying myself to be rejected because I was sending the materials out and I had to include a self-addressed stamped envelope for the return rejection. So I definitely could have given up many, many times because I felt like I was wasting my time and effort. But something within me just felt good when I was putting words together. It just felt like that's what I was born to do. So I began submitting articles to magazines and never had any idea of wanting to write a book because it just seemed too big of a project. So I was working for a newspaper in Bluffton, where I live, and my editor asked me to interview a World War II veteran in the area. This was around 2012. And I wasn't too excited about it, to be honest, because I didn't know anything about World War II. I loved history and I loved museums, but I just thought, oh, this person's going to be really old and I'll have to sit there a really long time while they think of things. But it turned out to be a life-changing event. So Carl Mankey had been a Marine in the Pacific during World War II, and he told me about being at Tinian and Tarawa. I'd never heard of those places. They were islands that the Marines invaded with being held by the Japanese. And I left that interview just totally impressed by the fact I had been sitting in front of a living piece of history.
Yeah.
Not a museum piece, but a real person who had made history happen. So I felt like I wanted to see if I could find other World War II vets. I didn't know any, but I just started putting the word out. And so children of vets let me know where mom and dad lived and, made that connection possible. The HIPAA laws made it a little difficult to get into nursing homes.
Oh, so, I hadn't considered that.
Yeah. I couldn't just go up to the desk and say, do you have any World War II vets that I could interview? They couldn't tell me those kinds of things. But neighbors, friends, and like I said, children, relatives, all helped to arrange these interviews.
Get you in the right place.
Yeah. And it helped, I'm just not going to do a cold call on an old person,
Yeah,
so.
no, yeah, sure. These days, they might think it's spam anyways. You just don't
or
know.
that I
There's
might
so many
steal something from them. And
Sure.
It was to the point where I was booking them up for almost every Saturday. I was working in a middle school library at the time.
Okay.
And I only had one day a week to do it. And generally, I did one a Saturday because I tried to do two, and it was really
a lot.
tiring. Yeah, because
Emotionally.
listening that many hours was long because each interview was usually 2 hours.
Did you ever tape?
I did after a while. I didn't do it at first because it was so hard for me at first to be listening and trying to understand what the war was, because I was going in there with no ideas of what I was getting into. It was such a huge topic because it was a world war.
Yeah.
Anytime I went in to interview a vet, I never knew where he or she might take me, anywhere in the world. I've interviewed men who served anywhere from Iceland to, North Africa.
That's what I was struck about the books. Every time you hear about World War II, of course, we hear about Germany. We hear about Japan. We hear about Pearl Harbor. But these vets were mentioning things, New Caledonia, Burma,
Yeah.
Bora Bora, Scotland. And I was like,
Yep.
so it was really, I was looking on a map. I was going to look for these more details on these stories. It was
Oh, yeah. And then I
impressive.
had to contend with each branch of the military.
Yeah.
They were different in their ranks, their protocols. I didn't know that all of the Marines went to the Pacific.
I didn't realize that
I-
either.
It was just so many little things that I
wonder
had
why.
to be.
I wonder who made the decision to put all the Marines there.
Well,
a note for later. Something to research.
Well, and see, it was a two-ocean war. That was one way that they looked at it. And so the Pacific, the troops in the Pacific the troops in Europe were priority, getting rid of Hitler.
yes.
So all of major effort was in there. So the troops in the Pacific weren't given as much
Support.
support. So it was a little hard to hear those stories.
Yeah,
I'm thinking,
absolutely.
who made that decision? That seems rough. But
Yeah.
anyway, so anytime I did an interview, it was a lot of intense things going on.
Yeah.
And I was so thrilled and I was so honored to do every single interview.
Yeah.
But I didn't start taping them until the end.
Did you video or did you just tape their vocals?
I did a little, and this was back when I had a tape recorder.
yeah.
So then it
Like
was
you're at college in class with your tape recorder.
yes, I definitely remember tape recorders. But I did near the second half, I began asking the vets at the end of the interview if I could record them for like 2 to 3 minutes, telling me what's something you would want a reader to know about your time in the service. I didn't want to put words in their mouth like, were you glad that you served, or
Right.
anything like that. And then I was doing a column for the New Sentinel. It was every other week, and they were taking those files then, those interview, the 2 or 3 minute interviews, and putting them on their website.
Do they exist somewhere now?
I don't know that they are still there now since the newspaper closed.
Okay.
But I have started a YouTube channel
Oh, good.
where
Yes.
I actually have been reading some of the stories, but I also put those files with the video and audio and video of the vets talking
Okay.
on YouTube.
So if we got on YouTube and searched Kayleen Reusser,
Yes. World War II YouTube channel. I can't remember. I should have looked it up, the exact name of it, but I'm pretty sure you'd
All
find
right.
it.
Okay.
And none of them are more than 4 minutes, except about 2 years ago, I came out with a book about women that I had interviewed who served in World War II.
Yes.
And there is a lady still living who's now 102.
Oh, that's amazing.
Who was a nurse in Europe.
It's incredible.
And the book came out the year she turned 100. So she allowed me to interview her in person about her time, and that was 40 minutes. So
Okay.
that is on my YouTube channel. But
Okay.
that's the only older or longer one.
Okay. I would have a hard time staying on track just because I remember the time we were in Chicago. This was probably a decade ago. Steve's great uncle was still alive, and he was in his 90s, and he was in World War II. And we were all sitting there. We were asking him questions, and we're all just sitting there staring at him. And finally, Uncle Bud was like, we can move on to something else. We don't have to talk about these stories. And we were all like, no, keep going, please. I mean, it was fascinating. And I think we could have sat there all day long and
Yes.
listened to Uncle Bud talk.
Yeah. I had a list of questions because I had to keep them on track. A lot of times they would want to go off and veer off, but they would get tired then before the interview was over if I allowed them to do that.
Yes.
Because of their ages. So I tried as much as I could to be polite and give them dignity, but just try to keep them on a schedule because I wanted to be able to get through all of the questions if I could.
What's the furthest you traveled to interview somebody?
Florida.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really.
Yes. Well, my husband, who is retired from the 122nd Fighter Wing here in Fort Wayne, is very much into World War II. And so if I just said to him, hey, do you think we could go down to Jacksonville? Because there is a man I know down there who was a POW in with the Japanese, which is pretty rare.
Yeah.
Because I
Sounds
don't know the
brutal.
percentage. Many of them died.
Yeah.
They just didn't make it through. And so we did do that. He was very, very
How did you get in
accommodating.
touch with him? Was his family in this area? Or?
He had a friend who lived in Michigan who had seen one of my stories or books. I can't remember if it was a story online or one of the books, and contacted me to tell me about this man. And there wasn't anything like Zoom, like we back then. There was Skype, but most of these people didn't know how to use that.
Right.
So it was not possible. I could have gotten him to Skype with me. So we did arrange to go down there. And thankfully, he was well enough to do a great interview. And his story is in my book, Captured.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any one veteran you were really excited to interview? Particularly excited about?
That's a good question that I've been asked, if there was any story that has stood out for me. And I would say I hate to try to judge them.
I know they're.
Because I just I'm
understand.
amazed by all of their stories. But I
What they
would say
endured.
it's the prisoner of war stories.
My Grandpa Wood was a prisoner of war.
Oh.
And that's the story that's always been told. When he passed away when I was in the 4th grade, and he had the taps, he had the gun salute at his funeral. Very touching. I still remember that. I was 8 years old. It just really sort of seared itself in there. But I don't know much about his history. And as I was reading through your books, I started to ask myself some questions, and I need to figure this out. I need to dig a little deeper.
It is very amazing how much information is available.
I've heard that part of a building burnt down in St. Louis, and so some Army records were lost. And I know
Yes.
my grandfather was in the Army. So
Okay.
I'm hopeful that his records weren't a part of those records that were lost.
Was he in Europe with the Germans or the Japanese?
See, I don't know. I was always told
okay.
he was in one of those death marches, and I don't know how. But stories get handed down, and
Yes.
I want to make sure that the story is being told correctly. So I need to go look.
Well,
so I don't know.
Because we've mostly heard of the Bataan Death March,
Right.
which was with the Japanese. Very brutal. I didn't know until I was interviewing one of my vets from Europe that there were German death marches.
I picked
didn't
that
know
up from
that.
from
Yes.
your reading.
I remember him telling me about it, and I said, well, I've never heard of that. And he said, oh, yeah. It was in the middle of winter.
And they escaped. Are these the men that escaped?
Yep.
I was. Well, what did you have to lose?
I mean, yeah. And
did you have to lose?
but they were underfed. They wouldn't have had adequate clothing. They
No.
could have been ill, even sick.
Right.
And yet they still had the desire to be free. Freedom is not free. It means somebody has fought for it.
That's right.
So, yeah, if I had to choose a group, it would be the POWs.
Okay.
And it's all men, which, I just didn't interview any women who were prisoners of war. But on the other hand, the women who I interviewed were so inspiring and wrote about them, and they all volunteered. We have never
Yes.
had a military draft for women. Every woman who's put on a uniform has volunteered. Outstanding.
That is outstanding.
So those stories have really inspired me.
I have, of course, heard of Margaret Ringenberg. I had read Tom Brokaw's book, The Greatest Generation, and discovered her there. And then I actually found her book in the collection that she wrote, because I was reading your story and I read about her there. And so I was piecing through her book, and she was very impressive. All the flying. I think some of her engines went out one time, and she had I can't remember. Some of the stories are blending. But
She was born to fly.
yeah,
She was amazing.
she was incredible.
Yeah, I actually got to hear her speak. She passed away in 2008, but my husband and I got to hear her speak out at DuPont Hospital or Parkview or somewhere before that, of course. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And this was way before I was interviewing vets, but I just had heard about her, and she was a big speaker. She had been at the Air Force Academy as a speaker.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah, she was quite
knew
well
what she
known.
was doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just, she got her first interest as like a 6-year-old, and her family was out motoring in the country because they did that on a Sunday when gas was cheap, I guess. And they had a barnstormer pilot who just flew and landed close to where they were driving. And he said, hey, would you all like a ride? Well, her mom
that was
said no. And I imagine the plane was kind of rickety.
Yeah,
I can't
would have been
imagine.
scared. I don't think I would have let my child go up
Well,
in it.
their whole family went.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
Margaret, her 2 sisters, and her mom and her dad. They finally got the mom in there. And it would have been an open, it wasn't enclosed.
Oh,
and
my
so
goodness.
this is the funniest part, but just the telling part. Everybody else in the plane was looking out, looking down. The story goes that Margaret was looking straight ahead to see what the maneuvers were, the knobs that the pilot was
she
using.
wanted to know how it worked. Sure. That was
And
it.
so that was her.
Well, and during that time, I can't imagine that planes were really widely available. So they
no.
must have figured it out for her to.
Yes. Well, she was
this.
I've interviewed 3 WASP. She was a WASP, WASP, Women's Air Service Pilots. And I've interviewed 3. She was the only one of the 3 that had ever been in a plane before she started training.
Oh.
That was pretty rare for her
Yeah.
to even be in a plane as a child. Because we'd be talking the mid-20s, 1920s. But the other 2 had been taking flight lessons on their own. So they already had an interest. And one of them took Smithfield here in Fort Wayne, and Margaret did too. And she worked there at some point.
I was going to say, that's very familiar.
Yes. And then the third one, I'm trying to remember. Oh, she was from Indianapolis. So she took from but she moved up here.
Okay.
Marty. Margaret just seemed, and she had very good support from her father, which was pretty unusual.
Yes, absolutely.
And then later.
Ahead of his time.
Yes. Oh, my goodness,
Both of them.
yes. And then later, after she married, her husband was a huge support.
Well, good for
She
her.
always said he was like her biggest fan.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that.
She had her own plane at one point.
Yeah.
Her own business.
Of course. Yeah, you would if you were that excited about it.
Yes.
So once you have all these stories together, how do you get you do the self-publishing process,
Correct.
is that right?
Yes. And
What's the next step, I guess?
well, and a big reason that I did want to do that was because I had published 9 books with 2 different publishers. They were children's books.
Those were those were all biographies, correct?
Yeah. So after I did almost 20 years of newspaper articles and magazines, I finally took a children's writing class, and the instructor, Michelle Medlock Adams, it was here in Fort Wayne at Taylor University at the time, she encouraged the students to contact a certain publisher saying that they were willing to give newbies a start with a book, assigning a book topic. And I thought, oh, I can't do this, but I was willing to try. So they gave me a topic of a young female singer, country music singer who I'd never heard of.
I think I know where we're going.
Taylor Swift. And I
Who my daughter
said,
has discovered.
she's like 15. What is
Yeah.
there to write about? Why would I want to write about a 15-year-old?
If only you would have known.
So I checked her out. I liked her. What she was doing then was kind of sweet. And so I did a story on her. And then I did other stories as well. They had to be as good of role models as I could expect to find. There were some I turned down because I wouldn't present a book to a child with my name on it if it wasn't a good role model.
Sure.
And so that was important to me. But I had done those books with publishers where all I had to do, I was paid, but all I had to do was the writing. I
Everything
didn't
else was
have
done.
to choose the cover. I didn't have to choose the title. I didn't have to choose the time frame or the pictures that would go along inside of it. I did have to do an index, which I hate indexes, but and then some of the back matter,
Okay.
discography and things like that. But it was just the writing.
Okay.
So I was paid for that. And then the publishers were in charge of the distribution and the promotion and all that.
Okay.
So for me then to take on doing self-publishing seemed like a monumental you step up. I thought, I can't do that.
Well, you have to edit. And,
Yeah.
I mean, everything.
Everything. The
So-
title, the cover. I had to think up a name for my publishing house and, be disciplined enough to get it done. And find editors. And
So did you create a business?
I did. It's not very unusual. It's Kayleen Reusser Media.
I know somebody else that's done that to
Well,
get their book out there.
I just kept my own name because I thought nobody else is going to want to. I've heard of people who had a certain name like Red Oak, and somebody else wanted it, and they said, I'm going to take that over, so you have to find something new. It honestly happened to somebody I know. So I thought, well, if I put my own name, nobody's going to want that. So that's what I did. But I did hire book cover artists to put it all together.
Where did you find the book cover artist?
On a Fiverr. It's an online, I guess it's a program called Fiverr. F as in Frank, I-V as in Victor, ERR.com.
Okay.
And the premise is that you can hire people to do something for you for $5.
Fiverr.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. But on the other hand, for me to want a good quality book cover, and that includes the back, front and back, and spine, I'm not going to pay $5 for that. I'm going to have to pay more. But it was totally worth it to me because I really, really wanted a specific look
Yes.
to all my books. I kind of wanted continuity, and I am very, very pleased. I've had the same man, Rob Williams. I love my cover.com, I think is the name of it. I can't remember. I think it's I love my book cover or I love my cover.com.
So did you come up with the stuff on the writing?
Yes.
You came up with
Yes.
the blurbs on the back.
Yeah, I told him I had some specs. I wanted the American flag to be on every cover. Now, this is the only one. Book 2 that I just read from, I hadn't got that through my head yet, that I wanted a
I see.
American flag. But by book 3, I did have that. And then I wanted pictures from the vets or of the vets. So book 2 that I just read from has photos that the vets shared with me, and I would scan everything. At the time, I had a handheld scanner. And
Yeah.
of course, now I would use a phone. But I put those authentic pictures, and of course, they had never been published, so that made them even better. And then that is included on the front and the back of all my books.
Okay.
And then I would have had to come up with the text, which he then would put on for the back cover. And then I had to purchase ISBN numbers
You had to purchase
Yes,
them.
yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
from Bowker,
Okay.
Bowker, Bowker.com. You have to. I purchased one individually, and then I realized it's a lot cheaper to buy in bulk. To buy
I
like
see.
10. I thought, what am I going to do with 10? Well, I'm on my second batch of 10
Well,
at this
good.
point. Yeah. So, but then, like in the other later books, I have been putting the pictures of the vets themselves on the cover.
So by self-publishing, you had to pay
Yes.
something.
Yes.
Did you break even?
Yes. Oh, yes.
I assume these books have been well loved. So.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and especially around here, because the bulk of the stories are from Northeast Indiana.
Right.
Mostly, I can even say, Allen County, Adams, Wells, Huntington, Whitley, a few from Whitley County, but mostly from this immediate area.
Have you had to turn any veterans down to interview?
No, but I've been turned down.
Oh,
There
okay.
have been not very many, I would say a handful, who just didn't want to talk about it.
Sure.
And I'm okay with that. Of course, I would never, ever badger anybody.
Certainly.
I just respected them, and I said, well, okay, that's fine. But just just so you know, the reason I am doing this is so that future generations
Yes.
will know what you all went through.
Absolutely.
Because the ones I was interviewing were some of the very last ones. There were 16 million Americans in the military in World War II. 16 million. And by the time I was talking to them, there were a few thousand. And at this point, I do know about 5 who are
Okay.
still living.
Right.
And most of them have reached 100.
Yeah, I was going to say they've got
Yeah.
to be. Mm-hmm. I know.
But
Well, it's-
yeah.
I mean, we're closing in on 100 years.
Yes, yes.
And that's
Yeah.
just like you forget. You know that it's 2023, but when you put it in,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh,
Well, when you
time
meet
has moved on.
when you get an invitation to a 100-year-old birthday party, thinking, "Oh, well, this is neat."
That is so,
And
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
I'm surprised how many I know that are still living.
Yeah.
But they were very pleased, I think, to see their stories published.
Sure.
And I did have book launches events. Some were here at the library.
Yes, they were. That's right.
And we had a nice turnout.
I
for
was at the
them.
last one, I believe, for the Vietnam
Yes,
vets.
yes. I had one there as well.
I have a signed copy of that book.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because
Well,
I helped
that's
with the title
right.
or something.
That's
I can't
right.
remember.
I forgot about
I
that.
voted
I did
on
have.
it, I think.
Oh, that's right. You won.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's right. I picked your title.
Uh-huh. Yep.
But I did have the vets who could be here during, this would have started about in 17. I think I had one in 17, 18, and almost every year after that I put one out. So I tried to have a book launch where the vets who were able and wanted to attend to come to the library, and then they were seated around the room, and then the people would purchase a book and take it to them to have them sign it.
Yep.
And of course they could talk to them as well.
That was fascinating when I got to talk because
Yeah.
Vietnam. I feel
Yes.
like World War II. You can get people to talk about that a little bit more, but Vietnam, boy, that's a tricky one. They didn't. We used to live next door to a Vietnam vet, and he did not want to talk about it at all. We knew it was off limits, and that was that.
It was really sad to me. I'm too young to know much about it, but I have now a lot of friends who were part of that, and actually some who have passed away due to Agent Orange, which makes me really sad. But it's just awful. To contrast the support that the country had behind the World War II vets. I mean, our country here was behind them.
Yeah.
Don't you know there was a war on? That was the theme. You got to sacrifice here because there's a war on and our guys are fighting over there. And then to hear about how the men had to disguise the fact that they had been in Vietnam when they came home. So sad.
I
so
know. And then
wrong.
you've got the PTSD from dealing
Yes.
with those traumatic situations, and then you come home and people don't want to hear about it. And it's like, well, how
No.
are you supposed to reconcile anything, and how are you supposed to
Yeah,
heal?
and I did get enough, of course, to fill the book, and I was so privileged to hear those stories because everything was new to me there. That was a revolutionary, a lot of those things. But I'm just angry that they didn't, because they were just doing what their country asked them to do.
They got drafted.
They got
Yeah.
drafted.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, that just
I
didn't
know.
make
It
sense
doesn't
to
make
me.
any sense at all.
No, I was really flabbergasted. And of course, I watched the Ken Burns, but boy, that was depressing.
I know. I know.
That was rough.
Have any of the veterans told you stories that they asked you not to share?
There was one man who I can remember who became very emotional during his time, the interview. And he said, "Can we just take a break?" And I said, "Of course." And so he got up and went and got a Kleenex and just took a few minutes. And he came back and he said, now, I'd prefer if you didn't put all this in the story. Well, he meant him having to take the break and weepy. He was crying.
Yeah.
Because he was talking about losing buddies.
Was this a World War II vet?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And so that I never ever wanted to put anything that would embarrass them.
Yeah.
Or make them regret telling me their story.
Yeah. Well, and I know that their letters used to get blacked out that they would send home, but like some people I think go and do these things and they feel like they can't say what they did. So, or they're not supposed to say what they did. So I thought, well, maybe somebody shared this many years later and didn't.
As far as the World War II vets, it would all be declassified by now.
Right. So they could say.
Yes.
Okay.
Which, funny thing is, there was a lady who had been in cryptography, which is codes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She was in the Coast Guard, and she had been unable to tell her mom and dad what she did.
Oh.
She couldn't tell her family. She couldn't write home any letters, without them blacking it out. Well, she just didn't write anything about what she did for a job. She was stationed in Boston, so she just wrote about the beautiful city and things she was doing for fun, but she couldn't write about what she did. So when we were doing the interview, even, this would have been 70 years later, she just barely touched on what she did. And I think it was still just due to her feeling.
She couldn't say.
That it was classified, which, at this point, no. That was interesting to me.
That is very interesting.
Yeah, she was highly intelligent. She was already a college graduate.
When she began
Now, think about this. She was a woman. She put herself through college. And this was just at the very tail end of the 30s, which was, we're still talking Depression era.
I wonder what her degree was in, because so often then it was
Business.
nurses and teachers.
Business.
Wow. Yeah, and that's even more. Yeah.
So they must have thought she was like a Christmas present when she applied.
Let's take her.
Yeah. Well,
She's
she
in.
became an officer.
So do you ever get emotional during these interviews?
Yes.
How do you
I just feel
work through
very
that?
blessed. I mean, I'm in awe of what these very, very young men and women had to go through. I mean, I think of these young guys flying planes with their crew, and they're all, if you were in your mid-20s, you were called the old man. It was, oh my gosh, like 21 and you're flying this big plane. I'm just, it's just, and then all the sacrifices they had to make, and some of them were even married and had children when they were sent. And I did talk to, I have a good friend, she's 90, whose father was killed on a ship.
Oh.
And she still is very sad about that.
Yeah, of course.
And I just think, well, she was 12. And it was, she just remembers it, how it affected her family. She had 3 younger brothers. Her dad was in his mid-30s, which was pretty old.
Yeah.
But, they were getting nearer. Well, they had been in the war for like 3 years.
They
needed
older,
more men. So they were having to draft, the older ones. And so her mom had 4 kids and
lost her husband.
Yeah. So I did actually even put her story in a book. It was Our War Too, talking about basically children who had been affected by the war.
Yeah.
For the most part, the book is about children who were in Europe. There were several people here in Fort Wayne.
I was going to say, the one gentleman that...
Yes.
Did you
I didn't, but
okay.
I know you've told me about him, and I still feel like, maybe I should put another one.
He was from Latvia.
Oh.
I don't know if I should share his name, but he was from Latvia, and he became an orphan and came over with a group of boys, and then has been in America since he was 12.
Yeah.
And he talks about how rascally he was when he got here, and a really wonderful family. And I down south of here, Adams County, maybe. I don't know. Don't quote me. And he got in with that family, and they took good care of him. So, but his story. And do you know how long it took me to understand that he was in Latvia? And so his parents, his father was serving on the other side of the war. And he just kept talking about his dad being in the war. And my brain kept going to America.
Allies,
And it's like, no, he was fighting for the other side. And somebody had to point it out to me. And I was like, why did I not? I don't know. It just wasn't, I wasn't connecting the dots. So anyways, fascinating.
Yeah, it's a very engrossing topic. And I know here, like at the library, you have just columns and columns of books.
Yes.
So
the
actually,
940s are huge.
I
section.
love thinking that I've seen my book here. They did it for honor out on your display.
Yeah.
Out of all the books you have on World War II.
They get checked out a lot. They get checked out a lot. They really do. People love these books. So constantly going to the shelf to grab another one off to put it back on the display. So
I just hope it
you did a good job.
Raises people's level of patriotism.
I don't see how it couldn't. So the stories, I've noticed they're all about 4 pages long. Do you try to stick to that?
I did. I was
format?
keeping it pretty much to the word length that I was doing the newspaper articles.
Okay.
700 words.
Okay. Was that hard to? Did you have to cut stuff out, or were you able to keep most
Yes,
things?
it was. Well, I didn't want to. I had to walk a fine line because I understood that most of my readers were not going to be experts about World War II or the military. So I couldn't use a lot of very technical military terms I didn't even know myself. I just tried to think, what would I want to read about in this story? What do I find the most compelling element? What's the best opening for this story in particular?
Okay.
Because I was hoping, like I said, I worked in a middle school library. I would have liked to have thought that middle schoolers would read this.
Yeah,
I've thought like from grade 6 or age 12 on up they would be well read. And then
they're very digestible.
Yeah, I think so too. And then I put photos in because I really believe in the appeal and the value of photos, and I love old photos
It
myself.
Personalizes it
Yeah,
more. You see these young men and young women, you see their faces.
And you learn so much from them. One thing I learned about is how thin they were, compared to what
all these farm kids,
Yes. Well, again, they were coming off the Depression. They just didn't have a lot of food. And they worked hard.
Yes.
And they were just not used to eating a lot.
Probably the sugary treats and snacks probably weren't quite as prolific as they are today.
Well, and not sitting around like we sadly do today.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
So where can interested readers find your books?
They are on Amazon. They are under my name. And then I have some myself. I have my little stash at home. There are a few places here in Fort Wayne that have them online. The Visitor Center has them in their gift shop. The Fort Wayne History Center, and I have spoken there several times for their lecture series. And then I could remember the exact name, our military museum that's on O'Day Road.
Oh.
I just
feel like I should know this.
In blank. It's a kind of a big name. It's a fabulous museum. They have been putting so much effort and money into developing it. They have a Vietnam wall there that is a replica 2/3 the size of the real one.
Okay.
It's fabulous.
That's big.
Yes.
2/3 is
all the names are on it.
Nothing small.
It's beautiful.
Okay.
It is a beautiful
And it's on
place.
O'Day Road.
O'Day Road here in Fort Wayne.
Okay.
They have a gift shop there, and my books are there as well. So any of those places, yes.
All right. Okay, I want to pivot now. I'm going to switch gears. We're going to do some fun questions. Okay. What's your favorite book or author?
A Voice in the Wind by Francine Rivers.
Oh, yes. I knew that title. Francine Rivers.
It's not military at all. My whole life is not devoted just to military, but it's one of the most beautifully written books I've ever read. Francine Rivers has been writing for decades, and that book has been out for like 20 years now.
Powerful books.
Yeah, I read it almost every year. It's about a Jewish slave who was
Hadassah.
Yes.
I've read.
Good for you.
Oh my gosh, I devoured those books.
The trilogy.
Yeah.
But that's my favorite of the trilogy. It's the first one.
The last one got a little weird again for me.
Yes. A voice.
I was like, I don't know what's happening here.
I'm just
Francine.
taking the first one.
Yeah.
A Voice in the Wind is my favorite book.
Okay. I understand why. It's a great read. So if we were talking about this earlier, but if your life was made into a movie, who would play you?
This was challenging because I can't imagine anybody wanting to audition for me for my part. But I did think our family for many years has been watching the National Memorial Day programs that are on PBS, hosted by Gary Sinise and Joe Montana, I think is how you say his name.
That's how I pronounce it too.
I don't know, but they are fantastic. And I love them. But if I had to get an actress, I would ask any of the women who have portrayed mothers when they give their stories of the mothers who have lost children. They are so moving. And
I agree. I've seen those.
I absolutely bawl my head off.
I do too. I've been there.
And so if any of those actors would like to portray me, I would be very honored.
Okay. If you could interview any one person, living or dead, who would it be?
That is really challenging because I feel like I've already interviewed the cream of the crop. Probably, and I was going to look this up, the character of Hacksaw Ridge, who's
Yeah, I know the movie.
the
you're
World
talking
War
about.
II vet who saved over
he was a
two.
medic, right?
Medic, yes. He was a Seventh-day Adventist, I believe.
I think he was portrayed by Andrew Garfield in the movie. I think he portrayed that guy.
I just wish I could think of his name. But anyway, I just don't know how he had the physical strength and stamina to keep going. When I saw that movie, and I'm pretty sure it was pretty accurate as far as what he went through, I'm just astounded.
My sister told me about it when she told me about what exactly was going on. I was like, I'll just let you tell me about it because I think I would be a mess if I was trying to watch it.
I can't watch certain movies like Saving Private Ryan. I will never watch that again.
It's hard. Yeah. Band of Brothers was incredible, but also
I
just want to watch the part where they get to the Eagles Nest at the end and they're all having a party.
Yeah. I actually know a guy that did that.
Yeah. In the book. Yeah, yes. That's right. So if you could spend the day with another popular author, who would it be?
Oh, my goodness. Alex Kershaw. He is a World War II vet.
Okay.
World War II author. Who I've really respected his writing style and his continuity of just somehow always finding new angles to cover the war when it's been covered so many other times. But he's still, just really breaks out with outstanding novels.
Okay.
Oh, well, not just novels, but
nonfiction.
Yeah, nonfiction. Yeah, it's really good.
Do you celebrate when you finish a book?
Yes, but not as much as I'd like to.
Celebrate by taking a nap?
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
My husband at this point, I've done, 16 children's books because I did more than biographies with children's books.
Okay.
And then I did 9 adult books. So 25, what else are you going to do except go out to eat? But when he takes me to Florida, I'm okay with that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I won't turn that down anytime.
No.
Okay. And so last but not least, how can fans reach you?
I'm on Facebook. I don't friend everybody there, but you can find me there. And I do have a website, which is simple. It's just my first and last name, KayleenReusser.com. And then I have my YouTube channel, and you can connect to me through there. I also have an email newsletter to let people know what I'm doing now. So they can let me know if they want to find me there. I have done speaking. I'm kind of backing off from that for over the winter, especially here, maybe for a few months. But I do a lot of Zoom talks as well.
Okay, great. You're a busy gal. Thank you for joining us today on Pages and Voices. It's been a true pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much, Megan. I really appreciate it.
And thank you to those who listened in. Stay tuned for more authors on Pages and Voices. I'm your host, Meg Bell. Until next time. I'm Meg Bell, your host of the ACPL Local Author Podcast, brought to you by the Allen County Public Library. If you enjoyed this podcast, please show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing it with your friends and family. Your support means everything to us.